Thank you so much for coming out this afternoon. I'm Dan Fienberg from The Hollywood Reporter, and really you're not here to see me, so let's just bring out Pablo Escobar himself, Mr. Wagner Moura. So we've talked about this before, and this is a thing that always amazes me. You get this offer to have a larger-than-life character, you know, iconic figure in a language you don't actually speak. Yeah. What is your reaction when someone says, this is sort of the role of a lifetime, here's the catch, it's in Spanish?
It was actually the most difficult thing I have ever done in my life. First of all, the director of the show, José Padilha, is a very good friend of mine. I don't know if you guys have seen this film is called The Lead Squad. It's very political Brazilian films about the way the police act, you know, down there in Brazil. And we are very good friends, and he's the director and the creator of Narcos. And when he invited me to do it, I first thought that it was supposed to be in English. So I thought, okay, I can speak English with an accent. It's not a big deal. And then they decided to do it in Spanish, which I think it's a very smart decision because I've never, I remember when I was a kid watching those Second World War films where German people would speak English with an accent. That it's weird. So I think that was one of the things that I like about Narcos is that it's a very authentic show, I think. The fact that we shot the whole thing in Colombia, in Colombian locations, the fact that this is spoken in Spanish. But I didn't speak a word of Spanish, so even before Netflix knew that, because there's this other thing, because this guy is very crazy. So he told me, so I want you to play Pablo Escobar. And yeah, cool. So I flew myself to Medellin, and Netflix didn't even know he was considering me to play the part. So but I flew myself to Medellin by my own, and I spent 4 or 5 months there. I booked myself in a university in a Spanish course for foreigners. I was in a classroom with people from all around the world, Japanese people, German people, teenagers from Korea, and it was, and at the same time I was in the city where Pablo Escobar grew up, which was also great. So when I started the show, so 5 months after that, after I arrived, the other actors started to arrive, and I felt like I was someone in an island that, oh, another actor, oh my God, you know. And when we start, I had a coach, a dialect coach with me all the time in the set. But it was hard. It was really hard. Javier Bardem has a great quote about acting in another language. He says that when he acts in English, when he works in English, is as there is a big office in his head with people working, sending emails, working on telephone, in order for that thing to work out. And when he works in Spanish, the office is empty. And that's a great metaphor, I think. So in the beginning, in the first episodes of Narc, that's why I chose episode 9. You can see that my Spanish is like it's not ideal, and it's like half of her brain is there doing the character and, you know, connected with the character, and the other half of the brain is like, am I pronouncing this right? Is this so it's kind of hard.
Well, are there any advantages to having to concentrate to that degree on the dialogue?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, when I remember when I did Hamlet in Brazil, it was the best thing I have ever done. I mean, for myself, not as a result for people that saw it, but for me as an actor, it was the most important thing I have ever done. And we translated into Portuguese, which is my native language. So I translated from English myself and the director, and that was such the exercise of translating it put me into the character and into the Shakespeare's universe in a way that when I went to Medellin, I thought about that. I thought that learning a language, for sure it's gonna bring something to me. You know, being there, just struggling with the language that the character speaks, for sure it would bring me something, and it did. I was totally focused on that, and yeah, so it was a great way to start a process. I myself, I like long process of discovering and studying and figuring the character out.
Now you're in those classes with the Japanese students, et cetera, with the Korean students. Do you tell them what you're doing?
No, I was embarrassed to say it was because I was 40 pounds lighter than I am now. I was really, really skinny. It was the most. It was. It's a big miscasting. I mean, because I couldn't speak the language. I didn't look like him. I was skinny. You know, it didn't make any sense actually. So yeah, I when I got in Pablo Escobar is the most famous non-Colombian person. I'm sorry, Shakira, but he is. Everybody knows who Pablo is. So so when I got there, I told everybody that I was a Brazilian student, that I was there to learn Spanish, which was not a lie at all, because I was embarrassed to say, "Hey, I'm here to play Pablo Escobar." You know, they ended up discovering it, that I was, and they were actually really helpful. They were like, "Yeah, we're gonna help you."
Well, talk a bit more about the reaction from Colombians to this person who is a folk legend, a villain, a hero, Robin Hood, sort of the boogeyman. He's so many different things to people in that country.
It's crazy. Pablo is, the history of Colombia is divided in before and after Pablo Escobar. And I would say 90% of the population in Colombia has a very accurate understanding of who Pablo was and all the terrible things that he did to the country. But still, when I was in Medellin, I went to this place called Barrio Pablo Escobar, which is the neighborhood that Pablo built for poor people in Medellin. And first thing you see when you get there, there is a wall with the image of Pablo, and right besides Pablo, you see Jesus Christ. So if you say anything bad about Pablo there, you are in a big trouble, and you can understand that because in South America, the government is usually doesn't. All the poor neighborhoods in Brazil, and that's where the narco trade takes place, and that's where they control the population. It's where the state doesn't get in. So they work as they were like mayors, or so they can give medicines to sick kids, and so the idea that drug dealers can be Robin Hoods that began with Pablo is totally spread up in South America nowadays. And you can't blame these people, because if I am a poor guy who doesn't have a house and a guy comes to me and say, "Hey, guess what? I'm going to give you a house," I'm going to think that this guy is really cool, right? The moral code is different, there is a. But people has a very accurate understanding of who Pablo is in Colombia.
Well, this sort of leads into a question from Ryan Jarek. Did you meet with any members of Pablo's family, and if so, did they support the show?
I didn't want to. I think I've read basically everything that was written about Pablo, both in English and in Spanish. And I've seen all the. And what happened in Colombia is pretty recent. It took place. This war that you guys are seeing in Narcos took place like 25 years ago. It's amazing actually how Colombia reconstructed itself and became a very modern and interesting country after all that. So everybody that you know in Colombia, basically everyone knows someone who was killed in the war in Colombia, or who knows someone who took part of the Juan Pablo Raba, the actor who plays Gustavo. His aunt died in the Avianca bombing, so it's pretty recent. So, and I didn't want to have a commitment with the family of Pablo Escobar. I didn't want them to expect anything from me. I didn't try to imitate Pablo. That was the first decision that I took. I didn't want to. What I did was I tried to know the most I could about him, in order to forget the whole thing and create my own version of it. Because in the end of the day, that's what we do. That's what actors do. Any one of us actors here who are gonna play, if you're gonna play Pablo, for example, when I saw Benicio del Toro playing Pablo, or there is this great Colombian actor who played Pablo in a Colombian soap opera, and I recognize in their works the Pablo that I had studied in the books, but they are completely different. You know what I mean? So in the end of the day, it's the way an actor sees, or it's how you connect your emotions with the emotion of the character. It's very personal. So I didn't, and it's crazy because as I didn't try to imitate or try to walk like him or anything like that, but I ended up doing it without knowing, you know what I mean? This thing that Pablo does with the paint. I was doing this, and people say, you know what? Pablo used to do that. It's really interesting.
Well, that's one of the things about doing a period piece, is that you have all of the sort of the external things that can help you. So how did costume help you? How did the mustache help you? How did the extra 40 pounds help you?
Completely, totally. I'm now trying to get rid of Pablo. and it's really hard. It's easier to eat and to gain weight. And this is not my body. I'm going through a detox thing now. I'm becoming vegan and eating just for a month. Not to get rid of this energy, because there is this thing that you guys are gonna agree with me, that it always amazes me that our art takes place in our body. The painter, he goes there and he paints a beautiful thing. In this thing that he paints, it's totally connected with his emotions, but it takes place outside the musician as well. But our thing is here. It always amazes me when I see an actor getting out of a scene, a very strong and emotional scene, and he's probably thinking like, oh, what am I gonna do tonight? I think I'm gonna have a beer. But he grabs a cup of coffee and his hand is like this. I think this is beautiful. I love this about our profession, because we give an information to our body, and the body believes that it's true. It doesn't know that it's a lie. You know, your mind knows it, but the body, and it's all here. So it's not like, oh, I'm carrying the character with me. It's not that. This is just, it takes place here. So I have his belly, I have all the energy of these 2 years that I'm living with this character. So don't worry, it's not that bad. I'm a good person. But I'm trying to get rid of it, you know. Now that we wrapped the second season, I'm really trying to, especially of getting rid of the belly. Well, but it helped a lot, yeah, because you feel different, right? You feel that it's not. It's like when you put a costume, it makes a big difference, right? When you go to wardrobe and whoa, so this is how the character is. Okay, so it's my own body. When you feel fat, you feel different. It's like, okay.
Did it make the character hard to leave behind at the end of the days of shooting?
To what?
To leave the character behind at the end of shooting
No,
days?
like I said, not at all. When I finished shooting, I just wanted to go home and, you know, to have a beer, to do something, to see my kids. But what I'm saying is, this thing, it stays with you without your permission. You know? You don't want to, but it's kind of there. It's kind of, you know.
Well, you talked about sort of the number of people who you interacted with who had either had a relative who died or a relative who had been with Pablo or whatever. What do these people tell you? Like, what are the conversations you have with these people like?
I was always trying to know how it was for them to grow up in those circumstances, you know. And it's interesting because that's the same thing. It's the same story in people that grew up in Iraq or in places where war was something that was a reality. They try to have a normal life. They are not. Of course, at 8 o'clock, everybody has to be home because of the bombs, and you know, and of the killing. But they have normal lives. They struggle to you know, they go to school, bang, a bomb. Oh fuck, a bomb, you know, and it becomes normal, which is interesting because it's scary, but at the same time is shows how human beings adapt themselves to realities, to, you know.
Now, how about the physical places themselves within Colombia? Where were you shooting, and were they actually specific locations where some of these things occurred?
Yeah, actually, the last scene, I don't want to spoil anything, but the last Pablo scene we shot at the very same place where Pablo was killed, and which was also energetically wise, it's weird as well, and we shot. It was all shot in Colombia, you know. Basically in Bogota, most of it in Bogota. But we also shot in Medellin as well, in places where Pablo was, and in places where the real thing happened. So I think that this makes a big difference in terms of authenticity to the show.
Now, there's the mythic Pablo that we all sort of heard about or saw in newsreels, et cetera. But what information did you find that you researched that sort of allowed you to understand this as a man? You know, what was the piece of information that got you into this is not the icon anymore, this is Pablo?
I always, I think that for me, it's always about seeing the character as for us, for actors, it's about seeing the character as a Pablo Escobar was a person. He was a human being, right? He was in Colombia, especially. It was kind of a journalist once asked me, "How can you portray him as a human being?" And I said, "Because he was. Believe it or not, Osama bin Laden was a human being. I mean, people liked him. They had families, they had friends, they had people that connected with him, that admired them. So." And Pablo was a very, very interesting character. If Pablo wasn't a real character, if I received the script where there was this guy who was a big couple, the most known drug dealer in history, and at the same time he's someone who loves his kids, who is a very good father, who do good things for poor people. His friends, the friends that he had, they were very loyal to him, and they all said that Pablo was a very cool person. He was very charismatic, funny. I would say this is a great character for an actor to play. This is, I mean, of course, Pablo was a real character, so there is all the ethical concerns about playing a real guy who did so many bad things. In an accurate way, politically, but in terms of in terms of humanizing it, it's a great character. You know, it's a very interesting character. Pablo wanted more. What he could be here till today, drug dealing if he wanted to, you know, because that's what most of the drug dealers do. They stay in the shadows. Pablo wanted more. Pablo wanted to be loved. He wanted to be accepted. There is a very big social gap down there in South America, the few people that have a lot of money, and there are the majority of the population who doesn't have anything. So Pablo belongs to this place. So by being the 7th richest man in the world and not being able to put his kids in the same school of the elite of Bogota, that was kind of a problem to him. So Pablo wanted to be the president of Colombia, and that's a very interesting character to play.
Now, you answered some of this, but Patrick Wynn asks, in your portrayal of Pablo Escobar, how much detail did you put into the mannerisms and the body language and the accents? And did anything new come to you when you were actually on the set and shooting?
Yeah, basically most of the things came up while I was doing it. Yeah.
What kind of things other than the hitching of the pants and whatnot?
In terms of mannerism, I don't know. At some point, my chin was starting to do this. And I don't know why. I think that it was like when I was getting faster with the Spanish and more, it became more fluid. My chin started to go a little like this. I don't know exactly why, but it's weird because when I started to see people from Medellin speaking, like especially farmers or people from the countryside, they kind of speak like this.
Well, now, okay, you shot the first season and no one had seen this, but then the first season actually came up on Netflix. How did people respond to you when they started being able to recognize you as being Pablo?
I think that people dig the show, like the show a lot. I don't especially look like Pablo, so I don't. In Colombia, that's where I was more concerned about because I really wanted them to approve the show. I wanted to be as respectful as we could with the Colombian history. That was actually my main concern while doing Narcos, and I think that I'm really proud about the fact that Narcos is not a regular cop show where good American cops go to a South American country to save poor people from a bad guy. It's more complex. The characters of the DEA guys, I think that they are very complex characters as well. Especially in the second season, you're gonna see that there are a lot of moral conflicts and then there. Of course, Pablo was the bad guy, was the mean person. But this thing is sometimes I think that the second season especially is about Pablo is almost the victim of the second season. Is a guy trying to keep his family together while he's basically being hunted by the rest of the world, by the CIA, DEA, the American, the Cali cartel, but everybody wants to kill him. So I see this character like a person who's trying to keep his family together while he's being to keep it normal, like people from Colombia during the war. So. Forgot what the question was.
Well, how people reacted to you
yeah,
when they knew
in
you
Colombia,
as.
yeah. So people in Colombia that were the people that I was most concerned about. They actually, a lot of people there, they are kind of tired of Narcos things. You know, when they show their Colombian passport and the guy looks, oh, Colombian cocaine, that's for them. That's like that sucks. You know, because Colombia became it's not that, you know. Of course, the drug trade was born there, but it's a different, modern, interesting cultural country. So they're kind of sick of that, especially if it's a show, if it's an American show with a Brazilian playing Pablo Escobar. You know, for them it was kind of, I was kind of concerned about that, but the reactions are great, actually. Of course, there are people that don't like it. But the reactions are really people are that talk to me on the street. They're like really friendly and nice.
Well, now going back, you mentioned that this was directed by someone who you had worked with before, and I'm sort of curious as to how important that was in allowing you to make this commitment and make this leap, and if you think you could have done it if it had just been a director you'd never worked with before.
Oh no! I mean, first of all, I would never be cast to play it if the guy wasn't my friend. And I would never succeed in an audition to play Pablo Escobar. Hey, I'm Pablo Escobar. Like, it wouldn't make any sense. So that was definitely super important, and the fact that we know each other very well. We work together. Although he directed only the first 2 episodes, but Padilha set the tone of the whole series, and all the directors that came after him worked on that style, and yeah, it was definitely super. It's great when you work with someone that you know that you don't. One of the I was asked the other day what makes a good director. For me, is when an actor is not afraid to fail in front of the director. You know, I'm not when you feel free to, okay, if I fail, it's okay. We find another way. We just figure it out. When you trust the other guy, that's not gonna be judging you or saying, "Oh, that's bad." It's great. So my relationship with Padilha is like that. I can try whatever I want, and he would go, "Well, why don't we do this?" You know. So it's great.
Well, what advice would you give the actors in the room regarding cultivating relationships with directors?
No, I think that this is it depends. I think that if you have a good relationship with a director, it will naturally be good. He's gonna need you as well. It's an exchange. And directors like to work with good actors and with actors that they like to work with. You know, I imagine that for Padilha, who is my friend, but I trying to get in his mind, it was like, I think it's gonna be easier to do it with Wagner because I know him. You know, I know it's gonna be faster than hiring an actor that I don't know, even if the actor speaks Spanish, or how is it gonna be? It's great because it's great to be in a set with someone that where the works just goes. You know, there's no so what is it thinking, or it just works.
Well, it's one thing to spend 4 months in a classroom and learn how to speak Spanish, but it's another thing to sort of believe that you can do it. What sort of allowed you to even have the balls, I guess, to sort of step off that ledge and do that?
I always struggle against fear. I think that for me, what's most important thing about acting for me, in my experience, more than talent, is courage. You know, it's having not being afraid of doing it, not facing things. So it was, of course, it was at night. Sometimes I was alone in Medellin, and I was like, what the fuck am I doing here? You know, I was afraid, and I was alone, and I was away from my family. I have 3 kids. They were in Brazil. I was like, what am I doing here? Netflix, I'm not being paid to do this. What am I doing this? You know, but it just felt right. You know, it just felt that was the right thing to do. Otherwise, I would spend my life thinking that, oh man, I didn't do the best I could. I could have done it. And I was afraid. I was, you know. And we actors, we create always things inside our minds that sabotage ourselves. We all know that. It's like, no, it's not gonna work. You shouldn't do this. We are always trying to protect ourselves. You know, we go in the ways that we know that we are good at, and then and that's bad, and that doesn't allow us to try new things. That's why I think it's great to work with a director that you trust, because he's not judging you, or he just wants you to do the best you can.
Having done this, do you now feel like you could act in Spanish regularly if you needed to, or
Oh
never
yeah.
again? Oh.
Now I want the Spanish market. Yeah. I want to work in Mexico. I love the Mexican directors. In Argentina, they have great filmmakers down there. It's great, and it's also great to learn another language. It's like I'm 40 years old, and now I speak Spanish. It's nice.
How were you different as an actor in the second season, having not needed to go through that preparation? Did you miss out on some of the sort of in-depth preparation that you had to do the first time around?
I'm sorry.
When you started the second season without needing to do 4 months of intensive training and research and all of that, how did you?
But in the second season it was actually because we had to struggle with a lot of things in the first season. Being in Bogota, not shooting in, everything had to be adjusted because Netflix no one knew what was going to be shooting, taking everybody to Colombia, money-wise, budget-wise, production-wise. It was all new for everybody. So in the second season, we kind of knew already what we should do, and also for the actors, in terms of we knew our characters much better, and we could be more precise. So the second season was much easier actually than the first one.
And Netflix has been very excited about how international and global the audience for the show has been. Where have you gone with this show to promote it, and what reactions have you been seeing elsewhere?
Right, it's very interesting. Very in the first season, I promoted the show in Europe and South America and also here, and the reactions are always great. Talking to journalists and it's always but different in any kind in different cultural backgrounds. So it's I don't know how you guys see when you watch Narcos, but when I was talking to German people, they were like, "How can that be possible?" For them, it's like things for us, for South American people, like that, dude. that's normal, and for them, it's like what? It's interesting culturally. It's an interesting exchange of information. Another thing that I like about Narcos is that although it's not a documentary, it has this documentary style with handheld cameras and the real footage that we use. And I love my friends they are always going to internet to check if that's real. Is that this really happened? And I like that exchange with reality.
Now, you talked about how you didn't want to sort of impersonate Pablo, but obviously, you go online and you can find videos of Pablo being interviewed and all of that. Have you looked subsequently to sort of check back on what you did?
No. Once I knew what I wanted to do, once I had my thing there, of course, before that, I was always watching Pablo and, but once I had my Pablo, the Pablo that I play is not the real Pablo, and is not. It's a creation. Of course, it's based on and it's interesting because I talk to actors. I spoke with Cuba Gooding Jr. the other day, who is doing this amazing work, and he said, "Yeah, dude, I imitated him." and I go like, "Yeah," and it really works, but it wouldn't work for me. I'm not. This is not a talent that I have. I cannot. Look at you and do what it's so I prefer to follow my own.
So if you'd had the chance to meet Pablo, you would have said no thanks. I'm just saying there's a certain recent precedent for actors meeting with South American and Central American drug lords to play them maybe in movies, and I'm wondering if you would have done that.
I was the only one. I was asked that during the Globe, because we had during the Golden Globes. One day before the Golden Globes, Champagne met El Chapo. So all the questions that I had was like, oh, so, and I was watching it afterwards in internet, and all the actors was like, yeah, I think he did a great thing, and I was like, I would never meet El Chapo. What is it talking about? I would never do that. No.
Well, is that an ethical concern, or is that I wouldn't want to sit with the guy?
I'm afraid of him to kill me. I don't want to get killed.
What if you were to play a character who...
Can you imagine El Chapo is like, oh, I got arrested because of champagne. Okay. That's a bad thing.
But would it matter the kind of person?
No, I didn't want to have. I mean, like I said again, I look at all characters, all persons. I mean, I'm sure El Chapo is a nice person for people that know him, for his friends. He's a human being. If I was going to portray him, which I'll never will, I would try to look at him as a person. That's our job. But I wouldn't like it to. I wouldn't, It's not. There is a barrier here that I wouldn't like to cross. You know, like I said, that I think that our job in the end of the day is creating something. We don't. I mean, it's okay. I mean, I don't. Who am I to judge? I'm not judging champagne. Champagne is a god, you know. But I think that I wouldn't go that far.
But would it be different if it were, say, someone who everyone thought of as a saint? If it were the president of a country and he was there and he said, Wagner, come meet with me. I want you to make sure you get my tics and mannerisms correct.
I mean, oh man, you know what? I have this thing today. I'm so sorry. Yeah.
What was the most useful resource you found in terms of
Books.
information?
There's a lot of books about Pablo. I mean, many books, and it's interesting because there are different kind of books. There are a lot of biographies about him written by very good journalists, very serious and pragmatic and dates and very information wise very accurate things. And there are the books that I most like are the books that were written by people that knew Pablo. They're very intimate, things like his lover, his son, his brother, and there is no agreement between them. One says one thing, the other says another thing about the same thing. So you figure that someone is lying, but it doesn't matter. Doesn't really matter because the things that it's their approach and it's the way they saw this character. Of course, the way his lover saw him was different from the way his son saw him. So there is no lie there. It's just a different approach on him, and it's great. Those books are great. His lover, Virginia Vallejo, who is a very very smart, intelligent woman. He lives now in Miami because she basically denounced everybody in Colombia, so she's afraid to go back there and get killed. So she's a very smart person, and her book has the best title ever. It's called Loving Pablo, Hating Escobar. It's great, isn't it?
Well, did you ever break it down in that way in your mind? The sort of the difference between Pablo and Escobar?
Yeah, it's yeah. I mean, I think it's the same thing. It's all mixed, but she found this difference.
Well, as you say, there are actual tangible dangers for some people associated with this story. Did any of you guys have any actual nervousness or tension or fear?
No, not really. No. I was just concerned about how people in Colombia would receive the show, but it was okay.
Well, along those lines, lots of movies like this, they tend to ultimately make the main character, Scarface would be an easy example. Scarface, not a good man, and yet the character has become this iconic hero. Were there fears from anyone that somehow you would do something with Pablo that would make him into this Scarface-like figure who would be on posters in college dorm rooms for hundreds of years?
I don't think so. No.
Well, who sort of is keeping watch on that? Is that the writers who are making sure that they make it a nuanced portrayal? Is it the directors? Is it everybody, I guess, basically?
I think it's one of the good things about Padilha is that he sat. I mean, we all had a very very close collaboration. I'm working on the scripts with the writers. We have a lot of freedom in there to create and to be, and my struggle is also to be more as accurate as we can with the Colombian history, because the American writers, as much as they had studied about it and they know about it, it's such a different cultural thing that sometimes for them it's difficult to figure out how a Latin Colombian guy behaves in certain situations. So we all had a very, and the Latin directors in the show, especially a Colombian guy called Andy Baez, who directed this episode that you guys saw now. So it was a very intimate, very, we always collaborate. The environment in Narcos is despite of the theme of the subject that we are talking about, is very, very light and cool.
How is Netflix different? How is it different working as part of that company?
They're very cool. They're very cool people. And they gave us this amount of freedom that I'm talking about. In that sense, it was super cool to work with them. But it seemed to me, it, when I did the first season, what I felt was that when I finished the first season was that, because generally when an actor do a series, it's like you don't know what's gonna happen with your character. I knew. So it felt like there was a break, and then we had to finish like I was doing a big film that we had to wrap like in the middle of it. But the interesting thing about Netflix is the fact that, and thinking about that idea, is that you can see the whole film at the same, if you are strong enough, you can see you can see the whole. That's really cool. That's really interesting, because you don't wait till the next week to see the next episode, and that's interesting. I think that the streaming thing is something that it's there's no going back from here. You know, my kids, they don't understand that they have to watch a cartoon at a certain time. You know what I mean? Oh no, Adventure Time's not now. No, I don't give a fuck. Let's just put it. You know, it's something it's really interesting, and the fact that Netflix is all around the world, it's interesting as well, because it brings cultural. When I saw Beasts of No Nation, for example, which is a great film, it's such a particular political, social thing from Africa. It's interesting to see this all spread all around the world through Netflix, and they are basically in all the countries in the world. So it's a game changer. It's really cool.
Now, you mentioned earlier that we saw the 9th episode here because you didn't want to show one of the first few. Are you an actor who watches your own stuff, or do you stay far away from it?
No, I did when we did the first season. I was able to watch the episodes before we released it. So, and I watched it like many times. I was like, checking it out. But when when Netflix released, I didn't see. So the DPs are always angry because, oh, you don't see with the right color, and but yeah, no.
Well, what do you see when you look at those early episodes?
I like it. I'm very proud of it. It's a show that I think it's a very unique, a very original show for the reasons that I mentioned before. And I like political things. I think it's a very political. I mean, for me, it was personally, it was really interesting to understand more about an issue that's a big deal in where I come from. You know, the drug trade is a big deal in Rio. That's and I always thought that drugs should be legalized, and now I'm absolutely sure about that. It's a big flop. This war on drugs is a flop. Is an absurd, and it only works for. And it's crazy because this war is taking place down there for poor young people from poor neighborhoods to get killed. And I'm not saying that the drug abuse is a big deal as well. Is a big problem, but it's a healthy problem. It's not a police problem. You know, so it's for me as a Latin American, it became more strong in me, the fact that it's just wrong.
Well, is that from the research? Is that from sort of seeing, traveling around, promoting it, sort of seeing how people are reacting to it?
You know, it's just by understanding how it began, and the approach, the policies on drugs, and it's complete. It's fighting the suppliers, the countries that export and produce drugs, is absolutely unfair, because the whole world consumes drugs. You know, here the States is a very big consumer of drugs. So there is no use in fighting the supplier when the consumer is big. You know, when people want it. So there is some. It will never end. We're gonna kill Pablo Escobar. We're gonna put El Chapo Guzman in a jail, and nothing is gonna change. Nothing. It will make no difference. Of course, criminals should go to jail, but in terms of in the big picture, it's not gonna make any difference.
How has this changed your career back in Brazil?
They know I can speak Spanish now, which doesn't make any difference actually. No, no, I think it didn't change anything in Brazil. It changed here because now in the States and around the world, people kind of, it's a very, very popular show. We were all of us, we were really amazed how Narcos became such a popular show. So it's great. I mean, people now are seeing my work in a global scale.
And just as a last question, this is from Garrett Backstrom, and he asks, what advice could you give to aspiring actors who face constant rejection in this tough industry?
Be tough. It's about being rejected. It's all about that. And yeah, but be brave. Be brave. Be brave. If you like this, if this is your thing, if you really feel that this is your passion, that you love doing this, that you're good at it, you know, go for it. Go for it.
Well, thank you so much, Wagner Moura.
Thank you.